Hello, everybody.
Hey everyone, happy Sunday. So we've got a handful of subjects that we're going to go over today and also some questions that came in. So why don't we start with the things that we were going to cover?
All right.
So the first it's not a question, it's a topic, is why your muscles get stiff and inflexible as you age and or overdo certain physical activities. So do you want to talk about that, John?
Well, sure, the fascia becomes unhealthy, stiff from repetitive motion, from lack of motion.
Why does it tend to happen more as you age?
Well, just your everyday activity. So we're always doing something, and it's repetitive no matter what we do. We have a job, we're walking to the bus, we're sitting in a chair all day, we're working a physical job, so we have repetitive movement with a lack of movement. And the fascia always reacts to that. Your body's immune system reacts to lack of movement or repetitive movement, and the fascia becomes dense to protect you from this lack of movement or repetitive movement.
And so basically you're saying the reason it gets worse with time is because there's an accumulation. You've had more repetitive movement, more lack of movement.
Yep. And it's in response to inflammation too, things we eat and things like that.
Stress.
Sure.
Okay.
You want to fix that fascia.
So is there anything else that you want to say about, well, and also, so I mean, you kind of brought it up, overdoing certain physical activities can also stiffen your fascia, because we have this idea that if we keep moving and keep active, that's really good, and that's going to keep us limber and fit. And that's true. It's, much better to be active than to be like a couch potato. But like, what about when we think about like the person who, does the exact same weightlifting for, years on end, or squats for years on end, or the runner, the person who's doing huge amounts of running for years on end. Those kinds of repetitive physical activities can also be really problematic. Can you talk about that?
Again, whether you're sitting, walking, lifting weights, anything, you're always making the same movement. If you're moving, you're asking your muscles to contract and shorten to move you. You raise your arm, you reach out, you lift your leg. And if you're sitting, we have to make the opposite movement. So we contract and shorten to strengthen. Weightlifting, swimming, running, tennis, gardening, you're grabbing things with your arms, so you're asking your forearms and shoulders and, to make all these movements. And they're all contracting and shortening. They're resistant movements, but we're only making one direction of movement. And when we all stretch, I think we're getting into a second question now, we lengthen without resisting, which causes more damage. So it's pretty elementary that we have to make the opposite movement to recover, gain energy, because when you contract and shorten a muscle, you're using energy. The muscles are energy hogs. That's all there is to it. They produce inflammation. If you work them too hard, they need time to recover. And then you have resistance stretching, what we do here at Bend the Body and teach people. And it's what every animal on the planet does except us. So we have a chance to do it.
So, okay, I'm going to kind of recap what you just said. You're basically saying that you don't want me to.
No, I didn't think I was unclear.
Okay, I won't. So let's keep going. Why traditional stretching will just make it worse?
Studies have shown that, again, you're pulling on a muscle, it's not contracting, and you're in a danger zone. So the body responds, the immune system responds, and puts down dense fascia, lays down these white tissues, part of the immune system, and then they patch up the area that you're overstretching, and then the muscle's ability to contract and be strong is less. So, and these are studies that have been done. All forms of stretching, PNF, ART, dynamic, static, and things like that, all weaken your muscles. So,
okay. So, I'm just thinking about something. I think that, like when we think about the general population and what people want, up until a certain age, people want to be fit and toned. And that's why they think in terms of like cardio and weightlifting, and any kind of stretching is like a by the way sort of thing. You know, maybe they do yoga because it makes them feel better and helps them relax. But the main goal is to be toned and thin and fit, right? And then this like critical mass point happens where they start getting injured. And they're going to physical therapy, and you know, maybe they pull back on various routines that they like to do. And so when you think about that really common trajectory, I mean, you see it all the time. It usually shows up for people in their 40s and 50s. They start getting injured, they can't do the workouts they want to do. Like, how does resistance stretching fit into this? Because it could completely change that very, very common paradigm.
Well, it restores your muscles, and really, you know, the fascia, when it becomes dense, and in a way protects us from our repetitive movements and lack of movements in there, it holds us in positions that are out of alignment, right? So, you know, a common thing for us, or people when we get older, we start to curve forward and hunch forward. The pelvis might get a little more flexed, the arms might get a little more internally rotated, the legs might get more externally rotated, and so on and so forth. Resistance stretching brings you back to a natural alignment.
It's almost like there needs to be a shift in mindset about ratio. You know, the idea that you need to strength train and do all this working out and cardio and, you know, get your heartbeat rate up and all this, like so much, and then maybe do a little bit of stretching. And of course, it's not even resistance stretching. It's the wrong ratio. Like, you could do your favorite physical activities that you enjoy if you made resistance stretching the dominant activity, and it would keep you fit, and it would get you strong, and it would keep you injury free. And so this idea of like, oh, I'm starting to get old, I can't run anymore, becomes just not true if you change that ratio.
Yeah, you want to develop the body so that you're in better alignment, the muscles are working better. When I say working better,
that's what we mean by flexible.
Yeah, the muscles contract and shorten, and they actually work better. So resistance stretching, and these studies have been done, and they always come up consistently the same, will produce 15%, maybe a little more, a little less, strength gains versus weightlifting. So if you're weightlifting, lifting weights, resisting and contracting and shortening a muscle,
or doing squats, or doing any of these concentric movements,
you will, if you do resistance stretching for those same muscle groups, you always got to do the hamstrings. They're a big deal in the body because they get the tightest. You will be able to lift more weight. Now, you always want to be better aligned so you can move better. You get faster and you get stronger. And weightlifting malforms the muscle and puts you out of alignment. You can see.
So there's not really a value in necessarily being able to lift more weight.
Well, if you're a weightlifter, you win by lifting more weight. That's the value.
Well, that's not who we're really talking to. We're talking to the average person out there that thinks that, you know, lifting weights is hugely important for their muscle strength and health.
All right, here's a good example. So that, like, as people get older, they lose bone density. You know, there's osteopenia and then osteoporosis, and weight-bearing exercises can reverse that. But all the people that get diagnosed or become have bones that are less dense, where are they bearing less weight? Did they lose 100 pounds and now they're not? No. The fascia gets denser, and the fascia bears the weight and controls the muscles. And so there's no weight coming down through the skeletal to keep the bones developed. I mean, so you really got to think about it in terms of real estate in the body, where the fascia overtakes the muscles don't work as much, and there's not as much volume. And when you resist and stretch, you get more volume in your muscles.
Yeah, I think, you know, the point that I'm trying to make here is meeting people where they're at and what the mindset is. And the mindset is, you know, lift weights, do cardio to stay toned, to keep my heart healthy, to stay fit, stay active. And that's it's actually not true. It ends in injury because they're not balancing out those movements with nearly enough of the opposite to address the fascia.
You got to balance out the movements. You got to do the resistance stretching if you want to stay in the game, because the running turns into walking, the singles tennis turns into doubles tennis.
The workouts turn into physical therapy.
Yeah. So you can change that, turn it around, and a lot of people are in our Bendables membership. We have people in their 80s telling us amazing things that are happening in their bodies and getting up and down out of the chair easier.
So next kind of comment here. I mean, we've sort of touched on it. It's pretty obvious you need to stretch, but what can you do sustainably, right? So we get that, you have to do something you're going to actually do on a daily basis to address your fascia and premature aging. So we've surveyed people, and, people are willing initially, where they're at their starting point, to spend 15 minutes a day on stretching.
Oh, yeah.
And that's probably even a stretch, no pun intended. It's probably not every day they're willing to do that. Now, this can change when they get involved in Bendable Body, they start stretching and it becomes their primary workout, then that totally changes. I'm talking when you first get involved, what is your capacity? What's your sustainability? What are you willing to do? So if you're only going to spend 15 minutes a day on stretching, first of all, what would you do? And second of all, what else can you do outside of stretching to keep the fascia healthy and prevent premature aging? What are some other dietary, other life practices that are really helpful?
So you want to address the tissue in your body that's the least healthy, which would be the most dense fascia. And for the general population, it's on the back of the shoulders, it's on the back of the legs. So you want to spend more time stretching the denser fascia in the body. Lateral hamstring, it'll improve the health of your bladder. Brain is the central hamstring, pancreas is the medial hamstring. And then in the back of the body, on top, you got your immune system for thymus, small intestine, skin. These are tough areas. And so when you think about people folding forward or hunching forward as they get older, when you change the back of the body, it'll shorten. And then so you can stand up more naturally. And as you stand up, you get that really nice external rotation or less internal rotation. We have flows. You can do all 16 muscle groups in about 15 minutes or 20 minutes. You can do that a couple times a week. You can focus on the hamstrings a little bit, a few sets. Again, the back of the shoulders, the immune system is something great to work on because it reduces inflammation throughout your body.
And then what about in terms of separate from stretching? What are things that you can do? I mean, one thing's coming to my mind is don't sit for too long. Interrupt your sitting, get up every 20 minutes and move around, because when you sit, you just keep on laying down layer after layer of dense fascia in the back of the legs.
Yeah, you want to move around a little bit. What I've noticed, because I do resistance stretching pretty much exclusively, we go on walks with the dogs. And so everything's in relation to, meaning as your body changes, how do you notice it changes? So we go on walks, up a mountain, down a mountain, so you can feel that it's getting easier and different. So for instance, when we first came down and I wasn't used to walking the inclines, my quads burned, when I would go up. And then it switched as I started going after the hamstrings and the quads a little bit. It switched to the calves a little bit. And then most recently, the hamstrings are burning, which is awesome because now they're working. The muscles are firing on the back of the leg, and there's space in my sacrum and my lumbar. And so the upper body's free to move around. It doesn't get tense in the neck. So, I mean, because we're all going in a direction. So which direction are you going?
I think that's another really good point to bring up. We have all these myths about how the body works. And usually people think where I feel it is my problem. Yeah. And, the point that you're making right now about finally feeling your hamstrings, that's an indicator that they're participating.
Oh, totally.
It's the areas that you don't feel that are the problem, because that's where the dense fascia has accumulated. You don't feel that. So, there's some major mindset shifts that we're trying to get across at Bendable Body. But when that happens, it changes your whole life.
Yeah, and you want that. It's very hopeful, as you experience it. You know that if every day I can do a little bit and feel much better, I can decide, you know what, I'm going to go after the hamstrings for the next few weeks or months and make a big change there. Those shoulders want to change as we get older and we sleep on one side to the other. I know there's impingements. And that's another thing been going after lately, the chest, the three muscle groups, lung, pericardium, and heart, really more than I have in a concentrated, and, sleeping with the arm way up and the back, either side, nothing's fallen asleep in a couple of weeks. It's really kind of cool.
I mean, essentially what we're saying in no uncertain terms is no matter what age you are, no matter what your goal is, you don't need to lift weights and you don't need to do cardio. If you resistance stretch, you're going to get a much more full body workout than you will any other way.
Yeah, then think about it, if you want to get stronger, you have to strengthen, and this is like traditionally to concentrically shorten a muscle with resistance, along the path of least resistance, like where you're weak. And when you stretch, you want to stretch where the tissue is the toughest, where the path of resistance is the greatest. Two basic thoughts on, strengthening and stretching the body. That's really.
So I think we have a couple questions that came in that I want to answer. And then I promised that you would show like at least one stretch to people to do, as part of
that. Yeah, they want to learn the technique. You want to learn how to do this.
So this first question is, I have a question about stretching the calf. All the meridians that your stretches are based on seem to leave out the calf muscles. And I have problems with my left calf ceasing up on me occasionally when working out. So the meridians don't leave out the calf muscles. Let's start with there. When we think about a meridian channel, okay, we're thinking about it as it runs along a fascial muscle plane. So there may be large muscles that are dominant in that plane, and it's true, the larger muscles are not in the calves. But the meridian channels that traverse through the calves are lateral hamstring, central hamstring, and medial hamstring. And so probably, if you were going to focus on changing the calves, you could focus on the muscles on the front of the leg, actually. But there's one other muscle group that we particularly associate with the calves, and it's actually in the chest. It's the heart meridian. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So, and the heart, and this is in reference to like a reflex mechanism down in our calves. When people have a heart episode, a heart attack, the body wants to go horizontal, so it doesn't have to pump blood vertically. And so, we used to do this when we were kids. You come up behind somebody and you put your knee into the back of their calf, and you fall right. You lose your back. You fall right down. So we have a heart stretch for the chest that actually directly stretches the calf. But like Sita was saying, when we stretch our lateral hamstring back here, we're physically focusing on it, but it changes the tissue all the way down the meridian. So the meridian for the bladder goes down into the pinky toe, up on the outside of the calf, butt, up the erector spinalis.
But it's really important to note that if you're we don't know what your problem is with your calf, but oftentimes wherever the symptom is, we'll send you to the balancing muscle group. So if you have a symptom in the calf, like a pain point, or it could be, we would have to know exactly, we would actually recommend you maybe try some stretches for meridians that are on the front of the leg, because that's going to give you relief in that symptom area.
Another way to look at it is when there's a cramp, and up until I started resistance stretching, my cramps were in my calves, usually my left. And that's really the only place I ever cramped. So a cramped muscle is contracting to short. It wants to work. It's like an SOS. But what's not cramping? Your hamstrings probably aren't cramping. So if you change the dense tissue in your hamstrings, you're going to change what's going on in your calf.
In very simple terms, your problem isn't where you feel it.
Yeah, it's somewhere nearby else. On the other side of the bone.
Which is frustrating, but when you really start to understand the fascia and the role it plays in the body, it makes perfect sense.
Mm-hmm.
It makes perfect sense. Okay, another question. I stretch often to alleviate chronic pain. I walk a lot too. Yesterday I had an accident and fractured the top of my fibula. I get that needs to remain immobile, but what about the rest of me? I know what I can't do. It hurts. What can I do? Well, I guess my first question is I hope you're doing resistance stretching. So if we're talking about traditional stretching, we wouldn't be recommending that. In terms of walking, that can be really hard on the body, especially if you're taking big strides and, walking really fast. But what can she do?
Okay, this is a good opportunity to show you a stretch that you can do. We'll point to the symptom. Sorry it happened to you. Let's see if we can give you some relief.
Better reset the camera so that people can actually see it.
We're going to lower. This one's okay. That one's okay. We're going to lie down. So the fibula, actually I fractured this when I was in high school, soccer. So where is that? Front outside of the leg, right? Front outside of the leg. So that is along the quad stomach meridian. Okay, so we would tend to stay away from that, okay, and stretch the balancing muscles. So if it's the front outside of the leg, we want to stretch the back inside of the leg. And that's pancreas, that's the medial hamstring. And we want to do it so that we, take the lower leg out of the equation so it doesn't hurt. And so we'll do it lying down. We also do it sitting in a chair. Yes, I'm going to do my right leg, so I'm going to show you the back of my right leg here.
Sorry about the white spot on our wall, you guys. Paint hasn't gotten here to fix it.
Oh yeah, I was putting in some pulleys, but we found out it's a superior wall and it doesn't bear any weight sideways. Okay, so you want to stretch here with resistance, right? So I leave the bend in your leg or leave it comfortable, with your injury. You can relax the ankle and foot. You want to, because the target is right here, back inside the leg. So we want to interlock our hands here and then press the leg into our hands. Now I'm turning my thigh in ever so slightly, right? And I'm pressing the leg away from me. And as I press the leg away from me, I want to pull the leg in a little bit against resistance. Just let it go. Relax and go back out to the start. Did you see how small that movement was? I'm showing you a resistance stretch for the medial hamstring so that you can help your fibula recover more quickly. Okay? Now that's the medial hamstring. It's short little movement pulling in, relax on the way out. Resist, resist, and relax on the way out. Now if it's a fibula, you could also do the central hamstring. So the leg would be straight. Interlock the hands and press it straight away and pull in a little bit and then relax as you go out. What I'm also doing is arching my low back a little bit. And you couldn't, fit your fingers back there or something between my back and the ground. But it's just to create more resistance, more stability, right? So this is how we resistance stretch our hamstrings. This is the central, and then when we turn the leg in a little bit, we're getting the medial. And that would be a really nice stretch to do to help your fibula heal. Great stretches for the hamstrings. Especially if you have knee problems or ankle problems, you're taking the knees and lower legs out of the equation and going right after them. But we have lots of stretches for the hamstrings. And you want to do, 3 sets of 10. Think of it as weightlifting, because the weightlifters, I think, have a really great kind of workout. I don't, the movements are the wrong direction, but 3, 4 sets, and then they're spotting each other and they're helping each other with a few more reps. I love that whole idea. I used to do it myself when I was much younger. And but if you all help each other with these actively loaded, resistant, eccentric movements, you get much stronger and faster. You're going to do all that work. You want to get some return on your investment.
So this was great. We're going to be here next Sunday. I'll send out some posts and some emails. We really love it when you guys give us questions ahead of time so that we can answer them. We teach live classes on Zoom Mondays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays. We're starting a new 12 and 4 pack this week. It's great because you come live. If you can't come live, you get the recording. There's 2 instructors, so one of us is watching if you have your camera on while you stretch, so we can give feedback. So it's not in person, but it's pretty darn good. We also have a membership site with over 200 on-demand videos. You get daily access to John and I inside there. So we have a lot available to you no matter where you are in the world. And we have a lot of free things too, a great blog post with videos, the YouTube channel, we post on social media. So get involved, get started, and start changing some of these myths that you have in your mind about exercise and wellness. And it was great to be with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for your questions and look forward to next Sunday's live.
See you next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye.